Call the meeting to order, please. Call the roll.
Mr. Bruley.
I see him in the parking lot.
Okay. Ms. Escalante.
Here.
Dr. McFadden.
Here.
Mr. Monk.
Here.
Mr. Rickman.
Here.
Ms. Jarrett.
Here.
Mrs. Walker.
Here.
A quorum has been established. Next on the agenda, Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda, citizens' comments. This is a portion of the meeting where you, the citizens, can address the board with any of your questions, comments, or concern. Be mindful that we ask you to stand, come to the microphone, state your name and address. Also be mindful that you may not receive a response to a particular inquiry here this evening. Also that you have 3 minutes by which to make your inquiries, questions, or concerns to the board. And last but not least, I ask that you address all questions, comments, concerns to the chair. The agenda is now open for citizens' comments.
Hello. This is Mary Campbell.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it time to
Yes,
make
ma'am.
a citizen's comment, Patrick?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, hello, I'm Mary Campbell. I'm from King Academy. I wanted to address the board tonight and speak to the fact for the last 4 years, I've heard numerous times, and even as recently as this June, how much the teachers have sacrificed financially to help the district become solvent again and out of the deficit. And although that may have changed due to some decision making that recently happened when before Ms. Davis left, I did want to reiterate the fact that the district, your staff has done everything they can to help the district. We have shown our dedication by making a financial sacrifice. We have come to work, we have worked hard, and we have helped our students in our district throughout the last 4 years and even years before that. But what I'm asking now is that the sacrifice that may come to many of our staff members and our students and their families and our own personal families by requiring us to come back to school face to face could be the ultimate sacrifice for some of us. So I'm asking you to very carefully consider the fact that a decision may be made to ask us to come back to school in an environment that is not safe for anyone. So I would like you to consider that with your the proposals that you're going to be receiving today, and please make a decision that you would be comfortable joining us with, whether it's remaining at home or whether it would be visiting us in our classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The agenda is still open for citizens' comments.
Hi, Patrick. Can I speak now? Okay. Good evening, members of the school board. I'm Christy Borton, and I've been teaching in Mount Clemens for the past 19 years. I would like to start by saying that I understand how difficult tonight's decision is, and I don't envy any of you for having to make it. I was a member on the Return to Learn roadmap, so I know how hard the work that went into each of the sections of the plan. We were faced with many of the same questions that you asked during the board meeting last week. I know as an educator and parent of 2 school-aged children that the answers are challenging and the logistics implementing them within a school present many complications. I would like to express my concern for in-person instruction at this time. I am currently a kindergarten teacher, and I can't imagine how to build a sense of community and family with my students as I have in the past while maintaining 6 feet distance. I've had the pleasure of teaching 2 of the present board members' children, and those relationships go beyond the 1 year that they are students in my classroom. How do I comfort a 5-year-old on their first day when they say goodbye to their parents? How do I help them tie their shoes? How do I help them put on their coat? How do I help them with bathroom issues? All of this while keeping them 6 feet from each other and myself. How do I teach them their letter sounds when they can't see my face through the mask or hear my sounds clearly? I know remote learning isn't perfect, but I do know that many of us have spent our summer taking hours of training to learn better remote learning techniques. This professional development was on our own time, so we would be prepared for whatever the fall would look like. We are professionals, and we will provide our children with the best education we can, even from a distance. This summer has been filled with anxiety of the unknown. Looking at the Macomb County data, it shows positive testing rates between 6 and 8% and averaging 80 cases per million, which is double the Michigan average. In-person learning will be filled with anxiety and fear based on the numbers and facts. When will we be exposed? When will we be sent home? When will we have to change our teaching styles overnight again? If we know in advance how we will deliver instruction, we will have time to prepare and be able to give our students more adequately designed plans. Then, when it is safe to return in person, we will be able to transition smoother. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. The agenda is still open for citizens' comments.
I don't mean to jump in front of everyone, but
Yes, you did.
my name is Elizabeth Piden, and I would like to comment if now is appropriate.
Your address, please.
Sure. My address is actually 37504 Camellia Lane, Clinton Township, Michigan, 48038. And I represent your teachers as their UniServe director, and I also serve on the Chippewa Valley Board of Education. So board members, I sat in your seat a week ago Monday. This was the hardest decision I've ever had to make while sitting on the board. There is not one of us that takes this decision lightly. I know that I haven't slept for weeks thinking about these back to school plans. I know there is no replacement for in-person education. I know that however students were to go back to school, it would not look like it looked like on March 13th when we were last together. I thought of those kids for whom school is their only safe place. I've thought about each working parent that has to scramble for childcare. I've thought about homes without access to technology. I've thought of kids with special needs. I've thought of kids who need ancillary services. I've thought about every child or staff member going home to someone immunocompromised. I've thought about every child and staff member who themselves are immunocompromised. I've thought about the number of staff and students who would not be returning. I struggled with the fact that we only have max 6 weeks personal protective equipment. I struggled with the fact that cleaning supplies are lacking or non-existent. I struggled with the fact that we can't social distance. I struggled with the fact that we remain improperly funded, and all of these necessities cost a lot of money we did not plan for or simply do not have. I struggled with the fact that it is difficult to get cooperation, and I struggled with whatever decision I were to make not being right. I also struggled with trying to reconcile the governor's executive orders regarding working remotely when possible and not gathering more than 10 people inside with masks, with meetings such as this, and the struggles of getting full community participation and input as a result. I know there is no playbook on this. I've watched as students in other states were going back to school and staff and students were getting sick, and schools and universities are closing as a result. Ultimately, my decision was driven by the health and safety of our staff and students. We cannot provide a quality education if we cannot keep our people healthy and safe. I have concerns about finances as well, but someone very wise once told me if money can fix a problem, then it isn't really a problem. We cannot fix the spread of Corona-19 with money. We cannot make people safe with more money. We cannot restore someone's health and vitality with money. And God forbid someone succumb to the effects of Corona-19. We cannot restore their life with money. This is a real problem.
Excuse me, ma'am. Your 3 minutes have expired.
Is that my
Thank
3
you for your
minutes?
comments.
Okay, thank you.
The agenda is still open for citizens' comments.
I'm Christy Nichols, MCEA president. I currently teach in the high school.
Point of order. Is it not the rule that we're all supposed to be wearing masks?
I take it off when I'm speaking.
That's the problem. That's when you spread the virus. having a mask on when you don't talk,
I'll keep the mask on, Ed. It's a big deal. I'll keep the mask on.
it is a very big deal.
I'll keep the mask on, sir. No problem.
I ask you to look around. We are socially distant to the best of our capabilities because we know it is in our best interest. Just recently, many colleges and universities have had to backpedal away from in-person instruction because of outbreaks. My alma mater, MSU, go green, just announced yesterday that classes would be virtual for the fall semester. Today on Facebook, I saw the most depressing picture. It was of an elementary school lunchroom where children were set 6 feet apart on opposite sides of the table, and it made me cry. I think of my 4-year-old who asks me on a regular basis why she can't go play with her friends and why she can't go, here or there. And I think of our littlest kindergartners who will be coming into Christy's classroom and saying that, I can't touch the toys, I can't touch my neighbor's crayons. It just breaks my heart. Now, I'm a high school teacher, so I really have not a lot of experience with elementary, and I know my high school kids will be okay, but I can't imagine what they're going to feel when they can't have Nichols' fist bump or corny joke in science and we all laugh and joke around. And I can't imagine what that's going to be like. I know we're not a university, and I know we're small, and we're one of the smallest of the county, but I also know that student and staff safety is my #1 priority. So whatever your decision tonight is, let it be in the best interest of our students' health and safety. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Agenda is still open for citizens' comments. Last call, citizens' comments. Seeing or hearing none, moving the agenda. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Under the consent agenda, we have items 5, the consent agenda A, approval of the minutes for the July 15th, 2020 regular meeting, July 24th, 2020 special meeting, August 13th, 2020 workshop, and August 13th, 2020 special meeting. The chair would entertain a motion relative to agenda item 5A.
I move to approve the minutes
Moved
from
by
all 3
member
of these
Jarrett,
meetings. Support.
second by member Walker. Any questions, comments, discussion on the motions on the floor? Motion on the floor, excuse me. Hearing or seeing none, call the roll, please.
Mrs. Jarrett,
Yes.
Ms. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Bruley,
Yes.
Ms. Escalante,
Yes.
Dr. McFadden,
Yes.
Mr. Monk,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman.
Yes. Motion carries. Item 5B, approval of bills for payment. Chair would entertain a motion.
So move.
Moved by Dr.
Support.
McFadden, second by Ms. Jarrett. Any questions, comments, discussion on the motion on the floor regarding approval of the bills for payment? Mr. Monk?
Yes, Ms. Bill, I was looking in the register and I just want to get, I saw that we had purchased some Chromebooks. How many Chromebooks was that for? Do you have an idea?
I don't know, but I would like to defer this to Mrs. Potter. Do you remember how many Chromebooks was that? I was thinking it was 100
It's 84.
or 84.
I thought 84
Well, that
types
was
or
the,
something like
yeah,
that.
that was the, that was
The
part
license.
of the license, but that was that, no, that was what we're gonna upcome. But I was looking
Right.
through the register and I seen that we had, I
Gotcha,
just
gotcha.
want to get an idea what number, how many was that?
Yeah, that, we have approved of, right,
So it was whatever you approved early in May. Do you have a,
If you don't have it now, you just
We can get it
email,
to you.
yeah, email. So, okay, that's all.
Any additional questions, comments on the motion on the floor to approve the bills for payment? Seeing or hearing none, call the roll, please.
Dr. McFadden,
Yes.
Ms. Jarrett,
Yes.
Mr. Monk,
Yes.
Mr. Bruley,
Yes.
Mrs. Escalante,
Yes.
Mrs. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman.
Yes, motion carries. Next on the agenda, item 6, curriculum personnel. 6A, return to learn plan. Mrs. Beal.
Hi. This is the meeting that we've been waiting for a long time. The discussion that we're going to have this evening will affect our kids and our teachers at least through the first month of school. So all of our schools, as you know, were shut down in March because of COVID-19. And since that time, we have been working on plans and protocols to bring our kids back to school safely. We met as a staff. We had many teachers that were involved in our planning. Christy Nichols was there, Cynthia was there, and many other teachers and administrators were part of creating the protocols and working on ways to bring things back. We looked at and really looked at some guiding principles of what it was that we want for all of our kids. One of the first things and one of the most important things to all of us and to our parents as well was our vulnerable population. These include our special education students, our POHI students, students with 504 plans, homeless students and foster children, as well as all of our at-risk students. And those weighed heavy on our minds as we went through all of the plans. Secondly is literacy and math learning. I think we all know, I know we all know, that literacy is the key to a future. And worrying about our youth and our children who have already had 5 months with no school really weighs heavy on our hearts. The third thing that really considered was transitions. Those transition periods are really important for children, and they're very vulnerable. From preschool to kindergarten, from 5th grade to 6th grade, and 8th grade to 9th grade. Those are the most vulnerable populations in any schools. But most particularly for us comes to my fourth guiding principle, which is our 9th graders. 9th grade year is the most vulnerable year for high school students, and study after study has shown that students who fall behind in 9th grade rarely catch up with their peers and have a reduced chance of graduating on time with their peers, and in some cases graduating in general. So currently, as Christy Borton mentioned earlier, currently Macomb County has a 7.3 increase in COVID-19 cases. Comparing this to Detroit, which only had a 2.6 when I wrote this update for all of you. In Macomb County, the death rate and hospitalization rates remain low, and our testing rates are increasing. And somewhere in this pile of backup documentation that I have for all of you, I have all of the testing places in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb County that are open at no charge. I'm asking the board to consider to reflect upon 3 options and choose one. The first option, remote learning for all students, pre-K through 12, beginning September 8th through October 2nd. This will give us 4 weeks to see where the virus is heading in Macomb County. This option worries me because engagement was poor in the spring. So there would have to be everyone, that all hands on deck is going to have to be all hands on deck for student achievement. I worry that many of our students won't be engaged in learning during this remote time. In light of the new Senate bill and House bills, it would give us an additional challenges in counting students toward our state aid payments. Remote learning would be a difficult way to teach a 1st grader to read, a 6th grader to develop relationships with his or her teachers, or a 9th grader to develop the skills needed to be on track to graduate in 2024 with options for their future. Option 2 is a hybrid model. This option would also be in effect from September 8th through October 2nd. At King, all of the students would return to face-to-face learning. Mrs. Lasek, our new principal over at King, agreed with this part of the plan and reiterated that her early childhood students can be safely in school. The recommendation from Mrs. Lasek is for the students to come back slowly, beginning with 4 or 5 kids in each classroom and then gradually bringing kids in. The ECSE program would also begin in person. At Seminole Academy, K-2 students, kindergarten, first and second grade students would attend in person. Parents, of course, would always have the option of a remote program for their children in grades kindergarten, first and second. This fits in with both the House and the Senate bills that asked us to prioritize in-person learning for kids in grades kindergarten through 5th. At Seminole, we currently don't have the space to socially distance and bring back all of the kids, K-5, but the K-2 would give us the opportunity to social distance students and staff. Para-pros would be used to separate kids so a teacher could work with individuals and smaller groups of children. Lunch would be hot lunch for all students that are present, and they could use the current cafeteria and social distance because lunchtimes could be staggered easily. All kindergarten through second grade parents would, of course, have the option of remote learning for all their children instead of face-to-face. Students in grades 3 through 5 would learn remotely with their classroom teachers leading the way. They will learn via Google Meet and Zoom and having some supplementary packets added. The curriculum would reflect the curriculum that they would have been taught had we been face-to-face in a normal learning environment. At the middle school, just our 6th graders would return face-to-face. Again, parents of 6th grade students would have the option of a remote learning program for their kids. Students could remain in a cohort, so each small group of children would stay with that small group of children throughout the day, and their teachers would come to them into the classroom to teach the different courses. Students in grades 7 and 8 would begin the year remotely. They will learn via Google Meet or Zoom with supplemental packets added. The curriculum, again, would reflect the curriculum they would have been taught in a face-to-face learning environment. At the high school, students in grade 9 would meet in person to ease the transition into a credit system of school and offer intense support in reading, writing, and mathematics. Parents who request a remote option would be approved, of course. Each student would be tested to determine the skills needed to be successful in a high school curriculum. Advanced students would be given different coursework to accelerate their learning. I would hope to have an individual development plan of some sort for each one of these students because I'd like to see a 100% graduation rate in 2024 from this group. Students in grades 10 through 12 will begin the year either remotely or virtually. And this is where I'm going to talk about the difference between what's remote and what's virtual. Remote learning is learning for students with their classroom teacher. They would be meeting via Zoom, teachers would have office hours, it would be the same curriculum as if they were in their classroom with the kids. A virtual program is a canned program that we purchase. You buy seats, and that would develop the curriculum to the students, and our teachers, our experts, would be basically monitoring the kids. We use virtual learning here at Mount Clemens High School for credit recovery. We purchase a number of seats every single year. We have been using this program successfully for a long time, and we will continue to do that. So the students in grades 10 through 12, those that need it, would be placed in a credit recovery program and learn virtually. The rest of the kids, like Mrs. Nichols' chemistry kids, would be learning with Mrs. Nichols in her chemistry class, but it would be remotely, similar to what she did last spring. Option 3. Option 3 would be full face-to-face learning K-12 through October 2nd of 2020. You'll notice that this is all a month. We have a lot going on. A lot's going on in the state. Flu season begins in October, It's let's give us 4 weeks, work on whatever program it is that we have and do it right, and then move and determine as a group what our next plan will be, our next decision. So I have some questions that Mr. Monk asked me, and I'd just like to share those. So one of his questions that I wanted, it doesn't matter. According to the plan, will all PPE and other equipment measures be in place? If not, what's your timeline? All PPE and other equipment will be in place. If we open for just the hybrid program, it would be in place for them, just for them. Robin is ordering signage, so whether we are remote or whether we ease into a little bit of face-to-face gradually, we have all of that equipment and everything ready to go. One of the board members at our last meeting, Ed, I think it was you, Mr. Bruley, I think it was you, asked if we could if we should test everyone before they walk in the door, or was it was temperature. So what we are looking at purchasing is, it's not a thermometer, it's a kiosk. And we would have a kiosk at the 2 entrances here at the high school, 2 entrances at Seminole, 1 entrance at King. For everyone that comes in, they will be monitored as they go in. My understanding is it takes just a second, and you walk right through, and you either have a green light or you don't. And so we are in the process of purchasing those for our students to monitor. So this will all staff and students, if we offer, will temperatures be taken on a daily basis. We will be using that monitoring system for our staff members and our students to be coming through. Will the Henry Ford Clinic be available that possible staff and students with COVID-19 can go to be tested? No. Henry Ford Clinic is open Monday through Thursday from 8:30 or 8 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, but they aren't available for suspected COVID testing. I do have a list somewhere in this pile of all the places, as I said earlier, where you can get tested, and we will post that on all of our websites, and all of our schools will have that information for parents. What Henry Ford Clinic is they will be available for 6 students and staff. Cold, a sore throat, things that are not COVID related. But they will be available at Seminole and at our middle school and at our high school to help the teachers and work with the teachers develop the safety protocols that the kids need to stay safe. Proper hand washing. What's the reason for social distancing? Why do we need to wear a mask? Mr. Bruley, it was a great idea, that talked about those first couple of weeks of school and why don't we teach the virus? Absolutely. So Michigan Model Health Curriculum has modules for each grade level, beginning in kindergarten through 12th grade, that will help our teachers teach that piece. And I think it's really important that kids understand, why do you need to wear a mask? Why do you have to social distance? Why can't I roughhouse with my buddy in the hallway? Other than the fact that it can be disruptive. So, let me see some of the other questions. Food service safety measures and equipment be in place for the start of school? Yes. I've been in contact with Cynthia Murphy, as Mr. Samuel, and they will be ready. She's got all kinds of plans. I have 4 pages of plans actually for her, depending on what program and how we open. And so they have got this covered. Will there be sports offered at the start of the school year? Right now, I'm saying probably not. I have not had an opportunity to meet with Dante Hanna yet. She's on vacation this week, and there was a family death as well. So we haven't been able to connect, but right now, football season has been canceled anyways until spring. So, and the other sports that we offer in the fall, Mrs. Hanna and I will have a conversation about that, because if we are closed, if we're remote, of course we would not be having fall sports. Will students have devices at the start of the school year with help from the MISD? If not, what's your timeline? Okay, so right now, at the MISD is giving us $100,000. They're giving us the cash, not devices, first of all. But we currently have 400 devices right now ready to go, ready to roll out with the kids, and we are on a back order for the rest of the devices. And we're looking at the beginning of November. The teacher devices, I believe they're on a faster track. Mrs. Parda, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we are looking at having the teacher devices in relatively quickly. Is that a yes? Okay. Let me see here. So that was the devices. Will the hotspots be installed at the start of school? If not, what's your timeline? So the hotspots that we're talking about here are the parking lot Wi-Fi that we are adding to our schools. They will not be ready to go in September 8th, because what's happening is at the same time we're installing the hotspots, we are also upgrading the infrastructure. Stuff like replacing switches and some of that back-end stuff that we need to support the newer Wi-Fi. So we're gonna do it both at the same time. And we are looking at probably mid-October before that's in. So next one. With the Board of Ed adopted curriculum, will all the materials be in place at the start of school? Yes, they're here. There's the reading program. It's here. It's at Seminole right now. We're in the process. The teachers are in the process of stamping books and getting all that organized and sent out to everyone. We also have some math manipulatives ordered as well. Most of you, so when I was a kid in school, my math program, I had a book and a pencil, right? So kids now have all of these math manipulatives. Well, with COVID, you can't share that. So each child will be receiving their own kit of math manipulatives, whether they're at home or whether they're here in Seminole. So we are ordering that as well, and I believe the PO went through today. Will Robin be prepared to handle the technical support for remote learning and devices? That was kind of an unqualified yes, but we do have some money in the CARES grant, the very first one, to support a person in that role. Phew. That was a lot. And I know you still have questions, and I know that you need to talk about this. So I'm going to step back.
I've got a question for you, and regarding one of your options is face-to-face for ECSC, POHI, K through 2, grade 6, and grade 9.
Yes.
Those are one model of those learners would be face-to-face. And within the confines of that proposal or that recommendation, there are also options that they don't have to be face-to-face. They could have the option of remote learning. How does that tie into the whole thing around attendance and how you track attendance? And what happens if a student is in person 3 days and then decide, well, I'm not coming the next 2 days. I want to learn at home because I want to stay home, or for some reason, the student has to be home to take care of babysit his brother or sister, or for whatever reason. How would that work, and how does that work in terms of a teacher potentially having students in front of you face to face one couple of days, and then the next 2-3 weeks you don't see them face to face? And so is that learning module going to be everybody? If I'm face to face and Ms. Walker is at home on the computer, it's the same lesson plan, it's the same delivery option. The teacher is delivering the lesson to the students face to face at the same time they're delivering the lesson to those students that are at home.
Not always, to answer the very back end of your question. So it's not always going to be the same, but it is going to be the same curriculum. So there are really stringent guidelines in the House bills and in the Senate bill of what we need to do to count attendance. So it's an easy one for the kids that are face-to-face. You're there, you take attendance, done. But when you are learning synchronously or asynchronously, there is attendance will be taken from a live lesson from at least one of his or her teachers. documented login online, and those are easy to do and easy to follow up with. Engagement in a subject area telephone conversation or even a small Zoom meeting with their teacher. That's all very easy to do. Or a documented email dialogue between the student and at least one of his or her teachers. So there are ways to do it. It's just going to involve a lot more documentation and more follow-up for the teachers.
Now, for going back to the questions, some of the questions that were asked in terms of the availability of the equipment that we're going to need, other than the equipment that we were using since March for the remote learning. How do you envision the remote learning being rolled out when we don't have all of the students don't have all of the equipment, they don't have the technological access? How would you envision that working for an online or a remote learner, for example, in 10 through 12? Those are remote learners. How do you learn remotely if you don't have the equipment ready to go September 8th?
So you're right. We have 400 devices and we have just under 1,000 students. So it would some of that would depend on which plan that we use. So first of all, and I don't have that number in front of me, but many of our families and our children already have a device. So we would provide a device. First of all, I would begin with the 12th graders and start bumping them down, and we would provide a device to everyone, first of all, that didn't have one. And then as the devices come in, then we would give the students the new device. So we would start from that point. Okay?
Anybody else? I got a bunch of questions. I'll take a break and let somebody else ask some questions.
Well, you're answering all of mine.
I got your notes, that's why.
Oh, okay. We're thinking together here.
At the front, the middle, and the back of my mind is the overall safety for everybody. Teaching staff, the support staff, the students, the parents that those students come in contact with after being exposed in school. I understand. I heard, the teachers, the professional educators saying the challenge they have for doing thus and this for this student. If that student is at home, how do you do them? But my overall concern is the safety of everybody. Particularly with there being so many symptoms that are out in the universe that, that can be, like I said, if your ear is scratchy, that could be a symptom of COVID. If you cough, that's a symptom of COVID, or it could be just a cough. My overall concern is still with the safety of everyone. When you can't guarantee and ensure that social distancing will be adhered to in all cases. You can put together the best laid plan, but when you put it out in the universe with a bunch of young people, that plan doesn't fall in line with what they think how things would go, i.e. what happened in Georgia. They were supposed to be practicing social distancing, and in that picture that you see, you might have saw 70, 80 kids in that hallway, and maybe 2 or 3 of the students had a mask on. Thank you for reminding me about the mask, Mr. Brewley. That it's just so many moving pieces that I'm having problems, trying to grasp and, what ultimately is the best way. I know that remote learning is not the ideal way to learn for many of our students, but I'm grappling with how do I keep everybody safe and everybody in a position to be able to get a quality learning environment in a learning situation. So I'm grappling with these things because there's so many moving pieces that we can't control. It's like a coach on drawing the X's and O's on the board. Well, if the X is here and O there, and the O goes there, and the X goes there, as it draws on the diagram, but what happened if the X goes a different way than you thought the X was going to go? That throws off the whole protocol. And, you know, again, for me, it's all about the safety of everybody. And we want to be able to provide a quality learning environment for all, but we still want to keep kids safe and keep adults safe and keep staff safe. And I'm just trying to see how, you know, how that, I understand POI students, you know, have a unique set of circumstances that they have to be in person. I understand that. ECSC, sort of kind of same way. Kindergarten, same way. But I still have that concern about the safety. You know, how do you keep a mask on a kindergarten? You know, it's
hard to keep a mask.
It's hard to keep a mask on a 63-year-old. You know, so how you keep it on a 6-year-old?
Right.
So I've read through this stuff. I've listened. I've seen what other states are doing, other school districts are doing. I still have a bunch of concerns. Doctor.
Couple questions. With remote learning, well, our instructional staff, is that going to be that they will be here in the building? Or are they going to be remote from their home, teaching the course?
My hope is that the teachers will be here in the school. We will open up so if they have children, so if they have children, they can bring their children in with them. We are also looking at opening a child care in the open pad at King for parents to use as well. My hope is that they'll be here, but I understand that there will be some extenuating circumstances and not everyone can. So the devices that we are purchasing for our teachers will enable the teachers to communicate with their students at home or here in school.
Okay, that leads to my next question. You said it might be some extenuating circumstances. Now, some of our instructional staff might have young children with other districts that might be doing remote learning themselves, and they might not be able to do their job. So how are we front-loading the substitute or the instructional staff for that possible outcome? Are we looking at that, foreseeing anything like that?
Mr. McFadden, could you ask that question one more time? I'm not sure what you're asking.
Let me do this a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
Some of our instructional staff might have young students or young children that go to other districts.
Correct.
That might be doing a certain type of model of remote or something like that where they cannot or they'll be unable to do their job because they're taking care of the other children. Mm-hmm. Now, those classes, those instructional pieces might need a substitute or something that to cover down. Are we front loading that now and preparing for something like that, or how we foresee that?
We have, Mrs. Potter and I met with EduStaff via Zoom. All these days have floated into one big long day. I believe it was last week. And they are confident that they'll be able to provide substitutes if needed. So especially with remote learning, many substitutes are afraid that they might not even have a job because they feel that they might not be needed. And the substitutes are confident and willing to come into classrooms as well if needed.
Now, I'm not saying I'm advocating remote, but I'm trying to get all the answers to the questions.
No.
Now, what about office hours for the instructors or the teachers? How will that be done? Will that be appointment only? Will that be an online whiteboard type of office hours? I mean, will there be a opportunity for a student to come to the district during those office hours with a proper face mask and shield to see the instructor? How are we going to do that proper situation?
Dr. McFadden, those are conversations that we still need to have with the union and to see what exactly that will look like. But teachers will be required to have office hours. Just what that looks like, it may be different for each teacher. So for example, a kindergarten or a first grade teacher is going to have their office hours are going to look very different than a high school physics teacher's office hours. So I think that will be more individual than it will be something that's going to come down from the district.
Okay, and our count day is in October, but it's after this
Correct.
4-week period, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's all my questions. I have some more in a minute. Give someone else a chance.
Okay.
Mr. Monk?
Yes, thanks. I am glad, well, I got comments and a couple of questions. I am glad to hear that we are going to get the monitor video temp. They use those at the plants. And what that does is that when we go to the plant, we show up, we stand in line, and we safe distance, and we show our badge, and then we walk. And about time you take 3 or 4 steps, that monitor, that infrared monitor, takes your temperature right away. And it's great. So I think that is absolutely a plus for us to have. Coming on what Dr. McFadden said, so teachers, if we are remote, students that are having issues will have the opportunity to set up an appointment with their teacher to come meet one-on-one to get help, if I'm understanding that conversation.
Again, that is going to be something that it's going to be up to the individual teacher's comfort level, whether they would meet one-on-one with a student, but they can certainly meet one-on-one with a student via Zoom.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thank you for explaining the hybrid and virtual, because I had different ideas about virtual.
I think a lot of
thought the
people
virtual
do.
was a teacher's in the classroom and all the kids can be on Zoom or whatever and they teach. I thought that was virtual. So thank you for explaining what those are, because I think there's a lot of misconfusion on what virtual, hybrid, remote, what those are.
You want to see some confusion, read House Bill 59, 11, 12, and 13.
Right.
So, yeah.
So thank you for that. The latest numbers that the superintendent just gave us is that they're up to 330 surveys.
Yeah.
And I did the math on it. We have 78.8% of our parents who want remote learning. We have 21.2% of our parents who want face-to-face learning. That's what I have right now. That's what's going in my mind. So I'll come back and ask some other questions.
Doc?
Madam Superintendent, so just to be clear, if the remote, any of these models, any remote situation, the instructor is required to come to this facility, or, I mean, where they normally teach at, or is that going to be remote both ends? Or we don't know yet.
My preference would be that teachers would come here. We can certainly social distance teachers in this school. There may be some extenuating circumstances where a teacher cannot. As a teacher, for me, I taught chemistry and physics. I don't have at my house what I would need to show and demonstrate to my students. So as a teacher, I would be here because I would have the resources that I would need to do my job.
That's what I'm thinking. So does that also, I'm assuming, I just want to make sure I'm right, that also includes the support staff also?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so everybody basically is going to be on campus except for the student.
Except for the students, correct. Can you tell me what you mean by support staff?
Custodial, security.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
Security.
We may not need some of those support staff if we don't have any students in the school.
Right.
I can't see much of a need for security.
So it'd be more like a skeleton crew.
Correct.
Okay.
Ed?
So, for those teachers who would come here, since Henry Ford is not offering us any COVID help, we're expecting teachers to figure out asymptomatic people who don't display any symptoms. because the teacher is in the classroom with the students. There are both teacher and nurse, which we don't have. Because if any student were to become, during the day you come in, you go through the screening, everything's fine, you get something later, they're the ones that are going to have to pick that up. We don't have anyone else, do we?
No.
Okay. If a teacher becomes infected through a student or some other process, you're telling me that a fourth grade, or I should use 6th or 7th grade math teacher, for which we couldn't find a year, we're going to be able to get a substitute for that?
According to our meeting with Edu staff, the answer is yes. Maybe not.
According to a meeting on a phone with no guarantee written down in any contractual relationship. Okay. They can say what they want.
Mm-hmm.
We had the experience. All I'm saying is that we're a very small district. If we lose 1 or 2 teachers, it isn't just a question of remote. It's a question of none. For whatever period of time, hopefully a small period of time. But if that person takes a turn for the worse, then we don't have any education going on. Okay. If we go for face-to-face and then some people decide not to admit their student to that, does that same teacher have double responsibility for preparation of the kids in the classroom and the children who are remote?
So each teacher, just like now, let's say I'm a 3rd grade teacher, each teacher will have their 25 students, and some of them will be in person and some of them will be remote. So the materials that they're creating for the students that are in class would be the same materials that they're creating for the students that are remote.
Material is one thing, but if I'm a teacher and I'm trying to prepare for what I'm doing, I prepare one way if I know I have 20 students in front of me. I can do certain things. But if I have 20 students in front of me and I have 5 students outside, I have to figure out lesson planning for 2 audiences. So besides figuring out the lesson planning for 2 audiences, I'm also asking now that this teacher be a part-time nurse because we don't have the backup. Testing. We basically don't have any testing.
We do not.
No, we don't have any testing. Has anyone been in contact with the LA School District to figure out how what they say they're going to do to have testing all the time?
I'm sorry, what school district?
Los Angeles.
Oh,
They announced it before they go back, they're going to do testing. But we won't have any testing, so even the 7-day kind. Okay. Explain to me more in detail for the real young folks who have these special needs, how that would work? Would they be totally segregated from the rest of the school so that if you had a pod of 4 students and a teacher, that those 4 students and a teacher would not have to come in contact with any other human in the building? Is that possible, or is there more interaction?
That's a question, to be honest, that I would like to get back to you on. I would like to speak with Mrs. Tomlinson before I can answer that question. If you're speaking about the children at King?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So we will get back to you on that.
Okay. I mean, I can see how if we have special needs who are medically fragile, that we could require some testing ahead that will allow them to be home for the 7-day period, do our best. And that teacher, if we train them properly about what they're going to have to do to isolate and their family, so that we could provide a small pod that you set up a bubble basically as best you can, maybe. But I would want to know what the interaction is of coming and going.
Right, and I haven't seen that program because it's been closed since I've gotten here.
I
So,
get it. Do they bus? Do we bus them?
Yes, I believe we bus. Yes, we bus them.
And how many children are in a bus?
Just a second. Stacy, are you comfortable answering? If you'd like to, Mr. Bruley, if you'd like to write those down, and I'll provide the answers for everyone on the board and put them on the website for everyone to see.
I'm happy to do that, but I thought we were going to make a decision tonight.
Well,
so writing them down after the fact
Well, Mrs.
is
Tomlinson,
not
are
going
you
to be
comfortable
helpful to
with-
the process, I think.
I hesitate to just bring somebody from the audience up here. I mean, I'm okay here, but, so I don't know.
And these questions aren't meant to,
Right,
they're meant to go figure it out, because I
Right.
supposedly have to vote on this.
right.
Come up to the microphone, we could. Yeah.
Okay, so the plan at King that Melissa and I had talked about is that each classroom is completely separate. Once they come in the building, they go with their teacher to their classroom. They will not interact with any other classes. When they go to gym time, it's separate. Another class might go in the cafeteria while one class is in the gym. Our plan is to keep them completely separate in that cohort classroom.
How many students would be in a classroom?
So at King, there's limits. GSRP can have no more than 16 students in a classroom. We plan to start smaller, like 4 or 5 students at a time, and gradually build the program to capacity. ECSC can have no more than 12 at a time.
ECSC
Is
is,
the early childhood special ed.
okay.
They can have no more than 12 students at a time. None of the classes in that building at this time are at capacity. There's about 9 or 10 in the class.
Is Pohai,
Pohai is also
Smaller?
there. They have no more than 12 at a classroom, but right now the AM session's at about 8 and the afternoon's at about 5.
at about
5.
5? Would testing, outside testing, you know, if we could test them ahead of time, and would that be viable?
I think I don't know if I could answer that, honestly. I don't know.
But if you had these 8 students, you could keep them
Yes,
really separated from anyone else in the building.
yes, yes. We can bring them in different doors. We can separate them out. I mean,
Do they
ride the
come
bus
on the
together.
bus by themselves? Do they come on the bus with other children, or these 8 people come?
No, they'll mix when they come on the bus. They just get picked up. So the Bear bus has these 10 kids, and then when they get off, they will go to their separate classrooms.
So they've already mixed.
Correct. Yeah.
So the busing becomes a problem. Is it viable to bus them in groups?
That's a conversation with Trinity, I would think. because they're door-to-door busing, so they just go by neighborhood.
They're specially adapted buses, I presume?
No.
No, they're just a
No.
regular bus.
Yep, just regular. Now, the POHI students do have
POHI
specially.
is what I was talking about.
Yeah, they have specially adapted buses. They will not mix with the other preschool programs. They
No,
come
no,
in.
I get the
Okay.
other two. I'm talking about Pohi now.
Oh, POHI itself comes in on their own buses, and they're typically from other districts we house.
But do all of the students in that group come together?
No. If they come from Chippewa Valley will send a bus with 2 or 3 students. We have Lons Cruz kids that come on their buses.
So you're going to get a different bus driver with 2 kids, who's then mixed with a different bus driver with 3 kids, who's mixed with a different bus driver and 4 kids.
Yes.
Okay, that's very helpful.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
No problem.
Mrs. Jack, I'm sorry, we finished?
Yep, good.
Okay, Mrs. Jack.
I want to clarify testing. Testing is, especially on a bus, from what I understood from our last workshop and stuff, is that they would have someone there that would take a temperature, provide them with a mask or information, that sort of thing on a bus, and assist with seating them in correct or in social distancing spaces to control the bus situation. That's the one testing that I'm saying, what I understood for the testing, what I heard last week.
So we have really rethought that. Just like every other district, we make changes, and the kiosks make more sense to us than the temperature. We were talking, it was actually Mrs. Potter that pointed this out. What do you do with a child that has a temperature? He's on do you kick him off the bus? You
Right.
can't do that. So we would bring the child into school. They would come in through the kiosk. And if the child is ill, we have special rooms here for the kids to be. There is an aide on the bus, and the aides will be making sure that all of the kids have a mask. So masks will be passed out on the bus. Whether, if they have their own, they won't need one, of course, and the aide will be there to monitor behavior.
Okay, so that's one testing issue. Now, Mr. Bruley brought up testing, and if I understood correctly, that was for COVID, as you're saying, testing for COVID. My understanding is we are really small, and having testing here every day for our students is not feasible, but there are locations. My question is, how can we be responsible for testing everyone? It's not I don't know if there's a solution for that, or if there's something. We're not Los Angeles. We don't have the funding. I'm sure the state may have a solution. I don't know and stuff. Are there things going around somewhere, do you know of, or something that could?
Unless the state made it mandatory for us to test, we can't make it
Right.
mandatory
Right. So,
for testing.
No, Mr. Rickman's absolutely correct. Unless the state mandate us to do that, we're going to open up a can of worms here. You're going to test someone one day before school, and 7 days later you're going to test them again. The virus doesn't sit around and wait to come back and forth. How many times are you going to test these children? And when you're talking about testing, you're talking about nose swabs on a child. That's going to be very complicated and difficult.
right. And
So-
we're not professionals for that, I don't
Right,
think.
and then we're talking about how we're going to set the buses up. We're going to be careful with that, because we're not going back to segregation and
Right.
changing people that, hey, you in Chippewa district, you go over here, you can't do that. That's another illegal action right there. So we got to be careful how we present these things when we talk about them. Testing is something that you can't just grab a child and stick something up their nose without their parental consent.
Right.
And what if a child does monitor hot with a fever? What are we going to do? We're going to say, oh, you're going to have to get tested?
Call the parent.
Hey, we need to be careful what we're saying up here on this board, because we don't want to cross the line on something that's totally against our rights.
Well, that's why I wanted to clarify testing, so that it's not misconstrued. And then I actually was speaking to the lady who does my hair. Her family did have COVID, and they had, they quarantined everything, and it doesn't, you know, and she was in the, what do they call that, testing thing where they ask a lot of questions, the tracing. And you don't show, you may not show with COVID when you go through the machine the first day. Yes, I think that's a great idea, but you may not show up day one, but you may have been exposed or something. And having the protocols in place, I think, are the best way to go, and having that machine that you're walking through. I mean, even, you know, all the doctors' offices and the hairdresser, all these other places have the, you know, temperature, so it's not foolproof, but you have all those things in place. So that's all I got to say on that, the clarification of the testing.
Ms. Escalante.
I hate that we have to even talk about this at a meeting, because this should be like an exciting time, like you know, let's get our kids into school, it's, you know, normal times, but we're not there. And for me, it's kind of, I guess, a no-brainer without sounding like I'm completely unacknowledging all of the hard work that's gone into these plans. I know that people put a lot of time and effort into this, but just thinking and listening to all of this conversation that is going on, there's just so many things that we still, I don't think, are ready for yet, because it's not at any fault of anybody in any of the buildings or administrations as far as what we're trying to do. It's the unpredictability of this virus, unfortunately. We can sit here until we're blue in the face and talk about testing and monitoring, but at the end of the day, like Doc said, we can't force people to be tested for COVID. We can definitely monitor kids, and I think that's something we should do before they even walk onto our buses or into our buildings. But that's a lot to put on staff on the bus, people here in the buildings. I don't think we're ready yet for that. I don't think we're ready to bring bodies back into our buildings. I think that we will be ready for that, but I don't personally feel comfortable with that option at this stage in the game until we have an exact system beyond the protocols of this is what we're going to do if this happens. Yeah, we have that with some of the situations, but there's still a lot unknown, and we can't expect people to feel comfortable and do their job to their full capacity, even though I know that our teachers and our staff would do that to the best of their ability. I don't think it's fair. I mean, I look at, if I put myself in those shoes, I mean, I have a parent who technically is immunocompromised. She has RA. Would she be at a higher risk if I was teaching in a classroom and somehow brought it home? And unfortunately, that's the risk we take, even just walking into a grocery store. The other issue is that if everybody followed the rules, like, you know, you wear your masks, you follow proper hygiene, chances are we would not be exposed, we would not get it, even if we were in the area of somebody that had it. But we have a lot of people that don't want to follow those rules. People are more concerned about their personal rights being infringed upon than putting a mask on. It's not about us, it's about everybody else that we need to protect in the process. So for me, it's simple. If we're talking about all of this and we have all of these questions and there's still things that we can't implement 100%, we're not quite there. I feel like we need a little bit more time, and we will get there. And then it will be a completely different scenario when it's time to revisit bringing people back into our buildings. Those are my thoughts.
You started off, Madam Superintendent, that there were 3 recommendations.
3 options.
3 options, excuse me. The way I look at it, one option from my perspective is off the table. Face-to-face right now, in my belief, is off the table. So where I'm looking at it, we have 2 models to look at, and there's a lot of devil in the details and the hybrid model bringing back the students at King because of the special situation, and bringing back K through 2, bringing back 6th graders and bringing back 9th graders. There's a lot of details that need to be vetted out in that I think we have more questions than we have answers to that right now, which in my opinion and with my belief, it brings us, from my perspectives, down to basically one option, one model, or some way to hybrid in terms of I believe that we're not in a position to begin the school face-to-face. So some type of remote learning is the option that I would prefer. Now, if you want to add something to that as opposed to the whole district coming back as remote, do a part of, if you want to blend in some of these other components. But again, even with those components that we talked about being face-to-face, and I understand the reason why you're suggesting that, but it's still a lot of details that need to be worked out, even with that small group of students that we would be recommending, come face-to-face. So again, my concern is the safety of all involved. I'm not concerned about, well, that's another concern in terms of how you track, how you monitor the attendance and stuff, but I'm really more concerned about the health, safety, and welfare of everybody who is in the learning environment here in the Mount Clemens Community School District. So the way I'm looking at it is 1.5 models that we need to decide on how we're going to do it, and the face-to-face model in my perspective is not even, I'm not even considering that. Mr. Monk.
Thank you. Madam Superintendent, you got a hard job. You got a hard job. Yeah. And it was made even worse with that new bill that's probably going to get signed by the governor as far as counting pupils and attendance and all tied to state aid.
Correct.
That just made it even worse.
Yes, it did.
In my opinion, and I got a statement here and I'll read this statement. It just keeps, this is an unpredictable virus. Let me just read my statement. As a board member of this community, parents, students, and district staff rely on me to make a data-driven, informational, well-thought-out choices and/or decisions regarding our public education. This pandemic has forced me to really look at all sides of what the scientists are saying and what our teachers and parents are saying. The latest data from the superintendent indicates that 78.8% of our parents who responded prefer remote learning. 21.2% will prefer face-to-face learning. Our union representative has issued their MEA's 5 standards that must be met for a safe return to school. Per memo from Mary Campbell, President, MEA, NEA, Local 1, school employees, once they are required to return to work, are nervous that there won't be enough PPE and cleaning supplies to help keep everyone safe and healthy. They are concerned about social distancing and masks wearing on buses, in hallways, in classrooms, in cafeterias, and in all other common areas. They are anxious about continuous employment in an alternative learning environment. Support professionals say that it's vitally important to get students back to in-person, face-to-face learning for the betterment of their entire social, emotional, and educational advancement of each student. State of Michigan data shows that as of today, and this is yesterday, as of 8/18/20, infection rate is 2.97%. Region 1, Macomb County data shows as of yesterday, infection rate is 6.68%. This is over double the state's infection rate in Macomb County. There is no one solution that fits all in these unprecedented times. How do we force parents to send their child to school that doesn't feel it's safe? How do we tell parents to keep their child at home who feels their child needs to be in school? How do we force staff back to work when they don't feel safe? And how do we shut down the district when we have staff that needs to work and make a living to support them and their families? I will let the science, data, and information guide me in my decision on the direction forward to reopening our district. We have our reopening plan that has been developed by the superintendent and her committees. We have the governor's reopening guidelines, and we have the CDC reopening guidelines to inform us in our decisions as a board. In reviewing all the data, guidelines, and reopening plans, I can only support option 1, remote learning for all students pre-K through 12 from September 8th to October 2nd at this time. This will give us 4 weeks to see how the virus is spreading or declining. Also during this time, the administration can totally prepare for face-to-face learning and remote, suggested in option 2, hybrid model of the superintendent recommendations. I believe that one of the major triggers should be that in order for us to start face-to-face learning, we, as part of Region 1 Macomb, should be at or below state average in infection rate by October the 2nd. Also, at least 6% of our parents should want face-to-face learning by October the 2nd. This will also allow time for the district to purchase all technical devices and support technology needed to move forward. And like I said, Ms. Beal, Madam Superintendent, I think we have to get these kids back in school. We have to. But we have to do it safely. But I think that time period that you suggested from September the 8th to October the 2nd will give you and your staff just to really home in and dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Because, in my opinion, we got flu season coming up. And all the experts are saying, you know, they say we're still in the first wave. The second wave haven't even hit yet. Who knows what that second wave is going to look like? Right. But I think if we, this old cliche in carpentry, you measure twice, but only cut once. So we need to really sharpen that plan. And I think you guys can do it. And that's my comments.
I see your hand, Ms. Brew. Ms. Walker.
I have really thought about this really hard. And when your children are here with us, we are responsible for them physically as well as academically. They're away from you, they're our top priority here. That's why we prepare for, we have fire drills, we have tornado drills. God forbid we have active shooter drills. We know what to happen. We don't have a COVID drill. We can't protect those kids. And we can't protect our staff. And I have to vote to go completely remote. Those children have to be our top priority. And I think bringing them in the middle of this pandemic is not safe for them, and it's not safe for our staff. And like I said, right now we're no match for COVID. We're just not. We see what it's doing in other districts. We see they open the doors, they shut the doors. Colleges take the kids in, they're all set to go, and then they send them home. I think for the kids and for the staff, it would be better just to start remotely and move from there instead of bring them in and a week to 2 weeks later, we're saying, oh no, we've had a couple cases, you gotta go home. I think that would be in the best interest of the kids and the staff. So those are my thoughts. I just support the remote option.
Mr. Brugge?
I really appreciate the work you've done. Without you all having done the background, we would not be able to think through what is we think may be the best. So I appreciate the work. I keep mentioning tests because that is the eventual solution. And I'm not talking about a test that we presently have. I'm talking about a test that's being developed where you spit into a tube in a matter of a half hour, you figure it out. It's the NBA test. The NBA people do not get, they're taking this test already. There has to be a way for that to become popularized. So I think it may be coming, but I think we as a board need to say it has to come. I think that's part of our policy perspective as a board to say, you all, governor's office, whoever, needs to develop a test that is easy, accessible, and as clear as possible in a short period of time. I have two friends who are going to St. John's Hospital tomorrow because the one person had an aneurysm and he was okay, but they have to do a yearly checkup. And in order to get into St. John's, they're taking a test. And they're taking the test and they're going to spit into a thing and it's going to tell them in 1.5 hours whether they can be accepted into the hospital. So this test exists. It exists. We just have to get some of our institutions around here to get it. But people do have it, and it does exist. And we need to find it. Obviously, with my line of questioning, I'm for remote, and even through the diligence of trying to put the puzzle pieces together, it doesn't work. But I would offer one possible thought. Are the kids in 6th grade, they're in a cohort? They're like in one class, one teacher?
They would be one class, but their teachers would come to them. So when they get to go,
So they have many teachers?
They would have 4 core teachers, plus they'd have 2 specialist teachers.
Okay. Well, then maybe this doesn't work. If we had a teacher who felt safe in volunteering to do a class so that we could learn bus protocol, school protocol, and we could fill up that class keeping people safe as we can, because I don't think we can require, I get it, but I think we can ask, or we can make it for a particular thing, prerequisite, you know, for a particular special thing. Test before, come to the school, and do it. If there is such a thing that you had one teacher who could stay with a group of 20 kids, but I think they have to be older students. I don't think you can expect the 6-year-old to tell you when they're not feeling good. I mean, you're going to see it, but I think they have to be an older student who is verbal enough to figure out something's not right. And you can work with them to tell you. And we would do it so that they could socially distance. I think you could have a group here, and this could be their classroom. we have spaces in our building where we could socially distance appropriately, very appropriately.
Yes.
And with a minimal of other kind of personnel, if there is such a formulation, and if there is on a voluntary basis, a teacher who would rather teach in that setting, I would not require, but rather ask. And then we learn all of our protocols that may help us. But I don't, reading and watching, risk aversion by young people doesn't properly cement or adjust in your brain until you're 25. That's the age they figure that something clicks, that they really understand the risk aversion thing. So it doesn't work with small kids. And children naturally want to be together and cling. So we would have to have a group that would be appropriate to try and teach them how to do this maneuver in a world that's a pandemic world. So if there was something like that, and we had a group of parents who would prefer, and we had a teacher who might, then I could see trying one classroom, self-contained. But other than that, I think it has to be remote.
Ms. Jack.
This sheet that we received from, on our tables on the schools that are remote, hybrid, face-to-face, there's 21 schools. 4 of them are remote and virtual. There's a lot of them, it's a mixed bag. But my recommendation would not only be remote, but virtual, because that is the one that has the seats where the students can catch up, especially the high school students, I think. And if we only do one, I don't think that's, I like the remote and virtual because it covers more bases with your, the students, where they have, and I've done virtual classes before and gone through the stuff, and it's not hard, and then you have that, I'm assuming that the teachers would, that reinforcement of the material would be, happen with additional, testing or so it clicks and stuff. I get where the clicks and everything, because sometimes it doesn't all set in. My son had to do virtual to catch up because he was a smart kid, but I swear it was difficult. But my other comment is that our younger kids they're becoming more isolated. Why can't I play with little Johnny across the street? They don't get it. The kindergartners and the first grade, second graders. I know face-to-face, I don't think that's an option right now for until October, and we have more information. But I just want to make people aware that that's going to be an issue going forward with the students. Sometimes, it's all going to affect how are we going to deal with that. That's some things that we got to think about for future too. So I feel that not only remote, and I recommend that, but I also recommend the virtual too, because it covers that.
Yeah, we'll continue the virtual for credit recovery. I just didn't put it in that piece, but we've had credit recovery virtual classes here for many years, and that won't stop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What and how will we handle the meal programs? Because traditionally we give students breakfast and lunch.
Mm-hmm.
If we go, since March, we've been doing that same breakfast and lunch thing. Would we continue to do it, or have we found we need to deliver it a different way to make it work more efficiently and effectively, or have we found, or have you been here long enough to know if that rollout program, meal program, worked efficiently and effectively? Because we would have to be able to mirror that going forward into the fall.
Absolutely. I'll be working with, if the choice is remote by the board, then I'll be working with Cynthia Murphy. She's ready to go whatever the decision is. We've had ongoing conversations, so all it will mean would be stepping up planning.
Mr. Monk.
I got a question. I was on TV a couple of days ago. Me and my wife was looking at it. There was a school district, I think it was in Arizona, and they went full remote because, well, let me ask you this. We are still paying Trinity, correctly? I mean, they still get...
I would refer that question to Mrs. Potter. Are we still paying Trinity right now? We are not paying Trinity right now.
All right. So if we're full remote, is it feasible, and this is, just I want to bring it to your attention, is it feasible, because if we're in school, we have bus stops. Is it feasible, if we're full remote, that we could have a bus or either or a couple buses still go to those bus stops, and the kids come to those bus stops to pick up food from the district? Is that something feasible?
Absolutely, that is feasible. We also had parents come here. They went to Seminole, they went to King. I want to say they also went to Washington to pick up food. The Washington piece, I'm not exactly sure, but I do believe they were part of our, I've got a yes over there. So we delivered food to all 4 of those spaces, and we would certainly be able to work with Trinity and our food service to deliver food.
Yeah, and I say that because...
And actually, Paul delivered food.
Yeah, I say that because, you know, we have some of our families who don't have transportation. And I think the latest numbers that I had heard what the food service was that we was reaching about maybe 200, 250 families a week, but we got 1,000 kids.
Right.
So that'll give us an opportunity to reach those other kids that we have if we went full remote.
You know, to me, that's part of that all hands on deck. I see Mrs. Monk out in the audience, and I think that it's our social workers, it's our accountability officer, it's some of those people that don't necessarily have classrooms. It's Deb Dickinson over at Seminole that are reaching out to the families to make sure that what they need, they have, to help make sure that their kids are engaged, but there's also other needs that they're going to have as well.
Okay. And last thing, and I'm going to look in the camera on this one. Parents, you need to be 100% involved in your child's education. With that new law that's probably going to be signed by the governor pertaining to state aid, it's imperative that we have every single one of our students engaged if we go remote learning.
Yes.
That's how we going to get our money to run this district. If those kids are not engaging, then we'll be at this board table talking about another set of issues. But parents, we need you to be 100% engaged in making sure that your children are doing what they need to do as far as their future, learning, being engaged. I know it's going to be tough, but I plead to every parent in our district, we need you. We need you. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity. I got a couple questions still related to remote learning. I'd like to get off my chest real quick. Is there any data that shows the effectiveness of class size for remote learning? Like how many students per remote class size learning? So one teacher, remote, how many students?
You know what, I don't know if there's been any, but what we would do with remote learning here is it would be the same class size that we normally have.
Okay, and I was going to ask, thank you very much for that. I got a couple more questions on that one. So right now, you say there's about 25 students per remote class?
Whatever the class sizes
whatever the
are.
class
So
sizes.
that
Okay.
varies between what grade level you are. Some classes are larger than others.
Mr. Monk just said that remote is going to be tied to our funding,
Yes.
right? Okay, so with that being said, remote tied to our funding, and what if a teacher, worst case scenario, like a math instructor for 6th grade or 7th grade is sick, and that class goes to a substitute rating. We don't know what the class size is for remote learning. Could we share remote learning with another district when it comes to that situation?
Yeah, we do know what our class sizes are.
Okay,
I
let me
mean-
rephrase the question.
Okay.
If we lose a math teacher for 7th grade and we don't have a qualified instructor, can we share those services with another district that's going remote?
What I would prefer to do would be to offer and give an opportunity to one of our Mount Clemens teachers to take on extra students, is what I would prefer to do.
Absolutely, I would prefer that also, but I'm just asking the question. Could that be a shared service or not? We don't know.
Right, no, I do not know the answer to
All
that.
right. Now, earlier I asked the question about the hybrid model. If the teacher's going to be, not hybrid, remote. When I asked the remote question, I said, is the instructor required to be on campus?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I asked that question, with social distancing, will there be a minimum or a maximum number of students that could be in that class, like 2, 3, or 4, in case those students need additional help?
That would definitely be monitored, and it would also be at the comfort level of the teacher.
So that might be an option.
It would be an option.
Okay. Hold up, I got my glasses on.
One other thing just to note in terms of remote learning is that we will be required every single month to give a report to the board based on what the engagement of our students are every single month, and there will also be opportunities and encourage for parents to come in and speak about the experience that their kids are having. And the plan needs to be readopted and reconfirmed every single month. So everything will come right back to you every single month.
My last question.
Okay.
My last question is pretty simple. We lack these choices of face-to-face, hybrid, remote, and virtual, right? Now, I'm pretty sure the governor wouldn't mind us having remote because just in case we have another wave and it's like total shutdown, if we're remote, we still operational, correct? We're still running as...
Yes.
Okay. Because my question was, what happens if we do get shut down and we're doing a hybrid model? We're SOL, right?
No, absolutely not. If we do a hybrid and schools are closed again by the governor, it'll be just the way it was in the spring. We'll have more devices, hopefully by then, and we'll be better organized, and teachers know what they're doing more with remote learning, and they have lesson plans, and they're all set for that, which is very different from, oh, it's Friday, and then Monday we're done. So, and then done for the whole school year. So there's a lot more preparation that is going into all of this.
So basically saying we'd be in a better situation.
Correct.
Absolutely. All right, thank you. Those are my questions.
To follow on the food issue, I don't know, but my impression was of the food situation a bit chaotic. I would hope that we could look at it as an opportunity for more like a Meals on Wheels program that's organized by locality and maybe involving some of our senior students in a community program that they all could then get their community credit hours out of, by making sure that they have responsibility to X people and creating a little chain that works, and trying to build in that sense of social responsibility for one another and giving them some benefit for them doing it. And then also, bringing them together in virtual ways. So whatever, but I just think that we should look at that as not just something we have to do, but some possible good thing of communication back and forth.
That sounds like a great idea, an opportunity that we can look into.
I have a question, and I don't know if anybody can address the experience with remote environment that we've had since March, but in terms of student dress, when you're on a Zoom call, if we vote to go remotely for everybody for the first month, they're just concerned because I'm hearing from other states, other situations where a third grade class is on a Zoom meeting and Jason wears a t-shirt that says "Kill all radicals" or something like that, and it causes issues. I'm just,
I know.
Or I support all radicals. And it creates, some, confusion, or creates a situation for the teacher. I'm just wondering, did we have any kind of those experiences where some of our students may not have been properly dressed to be on a Zoom meeting? Because, you see the commercials where I thought we was going to be on Zoom and the guy comes out in his underwear. Those are real life things, that
Right,
you think
they
I'm
are.
being seen from here up, so it doesn't matter what I have on, from where you're not seeing. I'm just
Right.
wondering that we have any kind of experiences that took away distractions from the learning environment with our remote learning that we implemented, from March until June.
Not to my knowledge. I don't believe that we did have any incidences with that. However, if something like that did happen, I would hope that the teacher would say something to the school principal, and the school principal would follow up with the child and the parent.
Yeah, it was just
Yeah.
wondering, yeah.
It's funny you said
I
that
just
because
never
that-
even thought of that.
It's funny you said that because that did happen to a reporter. He had on a suit and tie and everything, but he angled the camera down.
And didn't have
he
on-
was in his underwear.
Right. Yeah. That's happened. Yeah.
To add on to Mr. Anyway, the Zoom etiquette for the students, I'm sure that's already in place type thing. I'm just assuming, but that, I've had to teach that to different groups. And that actually, the dress was one of the etiquette.
Looking at this sheet that was placed in front of us, these are high schools. I don't see any charter schools on here.
No, these are just MISD
Gotcha, okay.
public school
And
districts.
so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that whatever decision we make here this evening, we could potentially lose some students.
I do believe that.
If we voted to go face-to-face, we could lose some students. If we vote to go hybrid, we could lose some students. If we vote to go remote, we could lose some students. But again, I have to make my decision based on what I believe is the best environment for the students and the staff and the parents that send their kids here to the Mount Clemens Community School District. Looking at some of our neighbors, seeing that they're face-to-face, we had a portion of our polling parents that said they preferred face-to-face for whatever reason it is. If it's because they're working and can't get anybody to take care of the kids, we understand that, so we could potentially lose some students.
Yes.
Based on the surveys that we got back, the vast majority of the parents that sent in the surveys stated that they preferred, at this point in time, the remote learning environment for their students. So, whatever we do, we could potentially lose some students. But again, I have to cast my vote based on what I think is the best thing for the Mount Clemens Community School District.
Yes, most of the charter schools are face-to-face, and most of the private schools are also face-to-face, just so you know.
So you,
Are you making a vote or a recommendation, or what we're going on?
this is an action item.
It's an action, this is an action item.
Yes, sir.
All right, before that, I want to put my 2 cents on the floor. I asked a question about if the instructor's going to be on campus doing this remote process, because they'll be doing online monitoring like we talking to the camera right now. That's how I'm envisioning. That's the vision I'm seeing? That's what it's going to be like?
For some of the day, yes.
Okay.
There will be assignments for the students that each teacher every day will have a syllabus of what's going to occur. Some of it might be in person in terms of a Zoom call. Some of it may not necessarily be face-to-face that day because there'll be a detailed assignment for the kids to do.
But majority of those instructors will be on campus.
That would be my hope.
Okay. Earlier when the virus first came out and the phases started laxing, I think CDC guidelines was no more than 10 people in a gathering, something like that.
Right.
I'm not going to quote it because I don't know, I ain't going through all the phases, so many of them, in so many different states and so many different levels. But if we're going to have an instructor on campus, in the classroom, looking at a monitor, could we allow social distancing of no more than 10 students in that room that's socially distanced to learn? Now, I'm just throwing it out. I understand how much peers fear around the board. But is that possible? It is, anything's possible, but is that something you thought about?
It is something that we've thought about. The 10-person rule doesn't
I just
apply
threw
to
number 10 out
schools.
there because of CDC in the past. I mean,
It does not apply to schools. We have some really large classrooms,
I
especially here.
I understand about how it not apply. I'm just throwing things out on the floor to see where it sticks at.
Right.
I don't, if the question don't get asked, I never know the answer. So I'm just asking the question. So that's something that the school is not willing to do or not even looking at doing. That's what you're saying? Because it doesn't apply to school districts.
Right.
Okay.
Well, basically, it's up to what this board decides to do.
Right.
This board could put a motion out there, we go hybrid remote with 10 students in the classroom. I mean, it's a blank slate, and for us to decide how we're going to reemerge the learning environment. It's the 7 of us. We're here to make that decision.
All right. I mean, the teacher's going to be here and if social distancing and all that good stuff. That's how I feel. I mean, they're going to be here on campus, and we can socially distance those students. I mean, I see students and parents and everybody else walking down Meyer socially distancing themselves, or apparently trying to. I don't know how they're monitoring it. I don't know the data. I haven't seen any of the research on saying who caught it where, if they caught it at Myers or Walmart or over at the gas station. I don't know. But I do know, I do see that people are doing that. They walking and they doing everything else, living life. And if we can do the same thing here for the ones, especially the ones that need us the most, that are having a lot of learning problems, and our district is having that problem, if I can reach out to 10 kids, it's better than reaching out to none. But that's my position on it. And like I said, it's the will of the board, how we going to lay it out there. I know you got the hybrid model on the list, and I know remote's there also. So, however you want to put the motion on the floor, I'm going to modify it anyway.
Mr. Brewley?
I move remote and virtual.
Moved by Member Brewley to recommend that we return to school with remote and virtual learning. Is there a second?
Support.
Second by Ms. Escalante. Any additional questions, concerns, comments? Mr. Monk.
Thank you. Just for clarification, Madam Superintendent, the motion on the floor, does that refer to option 1, remote learning for all students pre-K through 12 through October 2nd, 2020.
That would be my understanding.
If that's the will of the board, if that's the direction of the board.
That, right.
Okay.
By October 2nd,
Is
by
that-
October 1st, we need to have a report to the board. By September 15th, not to the board, I'm sorry, to the state. And by September 15th, we need to have all our goals set up. So there'll be a lot of preliminary things done prior to that. That's why the date, it seemed like a 4 weeks, let's readjust and see where we're at. We have to anyways. We have to look at this every single month, okay?
Mr. Brewer, if you don't mind, could you expound upon your motion a little more and to add that piece about October 2nd or whatever?
Add that appropriately.
So, Member Brewley moved to return to learning with remote and virtual beginning September 8th through October 2nd. Is that the recommended date that you had, Madam Superintendent?
It is.
Is that? the
That's
intent, Mr.
October 2nd is a Friday.
Okay.
So the beginning of whatever our new program is, Monday, October 5th.
Is that your intent, Mr. Brewer? Thank you, sir. Let's see, Ms. Escalante, would you still
Yes, yep.
support that remote virtual from beginning September 8th to October 2nd?
Yes, sir.
Motion on the floor, moved by Member Brewley to support the remote virtual learning environment from September 8th through October 2nd. It was seconded by Mrs. Escalante. And Doc, I see something. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's coming, man. I got a twinkle in my eye on this one. So how is this going to work with the students that need extra help?
All of our teachers gave extra help to students while they were off in the spring, and that will continue. There will be more engagement, and that's some of the pieces that we're going to be using some of our ancillary staff just to make sure that students are engaged. So there will be more outreach. When I say all hands on deck, I am not kidding.
Superintendent Bills, since it happened in the spring, what data show the effectiveness of the help those instructors gave? Because I can recall a lot of that information in the spring got dropped off at doorsteps, didn't get to students. A lot of students didn't get feedback. There's a lot of things that was dropped
That's right,
during
it
the
was.
spring. And you can guarantee that this will not happen during this 4-week period.
No, we're going to do our best. I can't guarantee anything, but we are going to do our best. And the teachers, it's just a whole different mindset out there, and everybody understands this is for real. So back in the spring, remember from the governor, there was to be no harm done, and all students were to pass regardless of what happened. And there was a lot of that mindset out there. And right now, this is for real. This is real stuff. This is real school. This counts. And if you're in 3rd grade and you're not reading that book that your teacher assigned you, you might not be passing 3rd grade because the 3rd grade reading law is back on the books.
Yep. And that's great to hear, because I'm one of those parents in the spring that my packet was sent to another address that I didn't receive. I had to come here and get the packet. So if I'm sitting on the board and my packet goes to another address, I hate to see what happens to a parent that's not sitting on the board.
Right.
So that's a problem. So we need some follow-up.
Yes, there will be more follow-up. Yeah.
Any additional questions, comments, amendments, concerns? Mr. Brewer?
I hope that you keep in your attitude about the 9th grade.
Yeah.
And figure out how we can put some special emphasis there. I think part of your planning, which was very good, highlighted where we need to do certain things. And so I would hope that you would bring some ideas back about things that we could help enliven those things that you identified.
Any additional questions? Doc?
This is my last statement.
Yeah, right.
Okay. I'm gonna bring out there, 'cause I'm gonna tell you why I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say no. The reason I'm gonna say no is I don't think it's enough. I think we need to do more. I think something else needs to be added to it. I don't know what, you're the professional, but I think we need more than just remote and virtual. So I'm going by experience. My spring experience wasn't a happy experience. So with that being said, there needs to be more done than this. So hopefully this goes the way it is, but something else needs to be added to it. So my vote's going to be no for this because I think we need more. Not because I don't think it's a serious situation and the virus is not deadly and people not scared. I understand that. A virus is a virus. You can't fight against a virus. Once you get it, you got to let it run its course.
Yep.
It is very serious. But at the bottom line, we still need to do more.
I agree.
Any additional questions, comments, concerns regarding the motion on the floor? The motion on the floor is to commence the learning environment with remote and virtual beginning September 8th until October 2nd minimally. Mrs. Escalante.
I just want to say to everybody in the room, everybody that's watching, I think we as a board understand that no matter what decision we make, somebody's going to get left behind for a little bit. There's no question of that because we can't possibly cover every area, every need within our district. Our district is very diverse and it has a lot of individual needs. With that being said, for me to have 4 weeks, I look at it kind of as like a cushion for us to just get a little bit better prepared because ultimately I think we can all agree that the best place for our children is in our classrooms. But it has to be safe. It has to be structured. I think if it was just about bringing back some of the older kids, maybe that would be a little bit of a different scenario because they can keep their masks on, they can follow rules differently. When you're dealing with the little guys, that's a whole other scenario. I mean, what do you do if a kid refuses to put their mask on? You know, that was one of the points that was brought up by a staff member that I spoke with. And, you know, that's the reality of it. You know, I just, I want everybody to know that's watching that our priority is to get your kids back on campus. The teachers, I know the teachers want that. I know, I mean, your hybrid plan, I absolutely love it. And my idea is that we start like this, and then as we get a little bit further in and we get into October, then maybe we move into the hybrid plan and then gradually have everybody back. But I think it has to be a slow process. I would rather be safe than sorry. Nobody wants to see anybody get sick and have that trickle down and, you know, where people get really, really ill. So, but I also wanted to say thank you, Monique, and to you and to all the staff that has been working on these plans. I know you've had way more than just COVID stuff to deal with. Based on our last meeting, you've had a lot of obstacles to overcome, and you have a lot more coming, so don't hesitate to let us know as a board what you need our support on as well, you know, whatever we need to do. Like, we're all in this together. When they say all hands on board, that means the 7 of us too, not just the staff in the building.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I see your hand, Mr. Brewer. I thought I saw it. Any additional questions, comments, concerns? With this motion, it puts into play how we will begin school beginning September 8th. We have a minimum of 1 regular meeting in September. We have a workshop, and we can also, you know, call a special meeting at any time that we need. This motion will last from September 8th to October 2nd. So at some point in time, we would lean on information coming from the teachers, the administration, in terms of what they learn, how they feel in that first week of rolling it out, and we'll know numbers in terms of what the virus is doing, because in September, we're going to have to make a decision on what we do in terms of learning from October 2nd, you know, to the next 30 days or the next period of time because like I said, we don't know what this virus is going to do. We might be meeting every month, you know, to determine, you know, I hate to see we'd have to do that, but that could be a possibility. So this is just
No, you will be.
Yeah, regulating. No, a miracle's going to happen. It's just going to go away.
No.
But this is, you know, governing how we start school from September 8th to October 2nd. So we'll be coming back making more decisions on how we continue after October 2nd, because right now we're just dealing with September 8th to October 2nd.
Yep.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns? Hearing or seeing none, call the roll, please.
Ms. Bruley.
Yes.
Ms. Escalante.
Yes.
Mr. Monk.
Yes.
Ms. Jarrett.
Yes.
Ms. Walker.
Yes.
Dr. McFadden.
No.
Mr. Rickman.
Yes, motion carries. Item 7, Business Committee. A, copier bid. Mrs. Beal, unless you want to give it to Mrs.
I'm
Potter.
going to lob this over to Mrs. Potter. The copier bids. Yeah.
She like me.
Folks, so I'm totally deaf now.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Okay, so the district issued an RFP for copier leases in the last fiscal year, in the final quarter. The district did receive several proposals for copiers, which were analyzed by Mr. Samuel in the IT department. Copiers and printers will be placed in all the buildings for use by employees in pursuit of educational and employment goals. Having reviewed those proposals, we are recommending awarding the contract to Millennium Business Systems. They had the best contract language to protect the district. In addition, they also had the lowest pricing. The price for a black and white copy is about 4 pages for a penny. The price for a color copy is 3 cents a penny, but color copiers will only be placed in administrative offices. This is a 60-month lease, and the monthly lease for all devices is $2,103.13. That does not include any of those per copy charges. Those would be billed separately, but it does include toner for the black and white copiers. We are asking the board to approve this lease. Right now, we are on an expired lease and going month to month. This would allow us to update and get better machines in the buildings.
Right now, we're going month to month for expired lease. How much is that month to month fee?
I don't have that number, unfortunately, right in front of me. I do not believe there is a large price differential, but I can tell you that the copiers are 5 years old, as are the printers, and they're pretty much on their last legs. So we have inadequate, it's kind of funny to mention this right at this moment, but my understanding is there has been inadequate copiers for teacher use in the buildings, and so this proposal is actually increasing some copiers for teacher use, which will alleviate the strain, because what tends to happen is that one copier takes the brunt of the abuse, and so the per copy charges are much higher as that copier gets used over and over. And so by placing more in the building and giving teachers more options, we're hoping to spread the pain a little bit. And this proposal is what we have based our budget on because it was the best pricing option for the district.
Mr. Brewer.
I move.
Moved by Mr. Brewley to approve the copier bid to Millennium in the amount of $2,103.13. Is that monthly?
Mm-hmm.
Per month.
Support.
Second, Ms. Jarrett. Questions, comments, concerns? Mr. Monk.
Yeah, got one. Ms. Potter, now with this lead, you said that that's a monthly fee, but it's also per copy. With the situation that we are in now, we will be using that copier at a much higher rate of copies. Is that rate per copy, no matter whether it's 1,000 copies or 10,000, or is there a ceiling where it gets to a certain amount, and then so that's a flat rate for it can be 1 million copies?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have finished my question before. Now, the copiers we got, you said it's going to increase the copiers in the building that we have now?
Specifically, I believe the plan is to put
I want to say it's at least one, it might be two at Seminole. They have the highest usage and paper usage in the district because of the nature, I think, of the students and the grades they're teaching. And so the thought was by putting one in each pod and each hallway is how it was explained to me. Because right now they have to go to the teacher's lounge, I believe, to utilize that. And so there's a lot of use, there's a kind of a lineup to get to that sometimes. And so that particular copy machine then, breaks down more often. We have downtime, they have to go to the office. And so those things can add costs behind the scenes. So by adding this extra machine, we're actually hoping to lower costs over the long run.
And that's the reason I asked the question. I had to add on to that question. The machines, when they break down, what's the additional cost that we are liable for? What we got to pay on those?
We have included in that, I believe, it covers the maintenance. So we call out the company, Millennium, and they come and service it at no charge. It also includes, like I said, the black toner. So, so there should not be a lot of extra charge involved in that. It's just that it causes some headache within the buildings operationally for the educators when they can't access the copy machine and they can't get what they need.
That's okay, I understand that. And Mr. Monk asked the question. It's not going to cost no additional money for additional copies, because we're going to have a lot of copies doing remote and virtual. No additional money, right?
To my understanding, no.
All right, thank you.
It's .0029 per copy on black and white. It's a pretty big price differential if you're using color, but your typical teacher doesn't need to use color. So those would only be placed in principals' offices for, things they'd be doing.
Ms. Jarrett.
It was my understanding from the business meeting that we had that these copiers would also have improved RFI scanners on them as well, so that's included in this pricing too.
Correct. So each copier will have a RFP swipe card, so staff members will swipe their ID in order to make the copies. And that just gives us an extra layer of protection that everybody, is using them that's authorized to use them. And so it's just something that we're adding for analysis, business analysis, and at the recommendation of some of the players. And so that is one thing that we have also included in this pricing.
How many copiers is this for?
The total number of copiers / printers is going to be 24.
Okay, that's 24 that we're approving with this lease agreement.
Correct.
What happens to the other machines on the lease that's expired that we still have in the district?
Typically, those these lease agreements are kind of a lease to own type thing, and we can opt to either have them pick them up or we can keep them. In previous districts I've worked in, we've stretched them out for one more year if we thought we could get one more year out of them. We do not feel that in this case this year with this situation. So that would be an answer I would have to gain from Mr. Samuel.
Because would we still be paying on those old machines?
No, once you approve this lease, Millennium will come in with the new and we will make the switch over. So
No, that's what I'm asking. Were those machines leased through Millennium?
Correct, yes.
The old ones were leased through Millennium?
Correct.
So with this new lease, do they pick up the old machines, or do we have the option of keeping them and still paying on that lease, or does it go into?
No, if we end the lease, the month-to-month lease, I believe our option is to pay them $1 per machine and then own them with no maintenance agreement on them, or to just give them back to them and swap out for the new machines.
My last question is, is it more to our advantage to lease as opposed to purchase the equipment?
To purchase them would have been a very hefty price to get 24 machines brand new. Typically, when you purchase, you would still have to, in addition to that price, add on some type of maintenance plan.
Contract.
And it is pretty much the rule of thumb for school districts, for budgetary purposes, to go with these capital leases so that you can spread that cost over the 60 months.
Thank you. Any additional questions, comments, concerns, and motion on the floor to approve the purchase of the Millennium computers, copiers slash printers slash scanners? Hearing and seeing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Bruley.
Yes.
Ms. Jarrett.
Yes.
Dr. McFadden.
Yes.
Ms. Escalante.
Yes.
Ms. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Monk.
Yes.
Mr. Rickman.
Yes, motion carries. Item B, Washington School lease. Mrs. Beals.
I'm gonna lob this one over to Mrs. Potter as
No
well.
problem.
She's it again, huh?
Yep.
Okay, so 5 years ago, the school district entered into a lease agreement with Macomb County in relation to the Washington Elementary building. That lease agreement is inclusive of $10,000 a month rent. The first $3,500 of that $10,000 was to be used as a credit toward utilities, with language that said if the district's actual cost for Washington utilities would be less than $3,500 in a given month, we would reimburse them for the difference. If the actual costs were more than $3,500 a month, we would then bill them for the difference over the credit given. So for all intents and purposes, we were actually only charging $6,500 a month for rent on the entire building. In addition to that, I did find, at the request of the board, I was able to locate the copy of the lease, and it does have language where they would cover maintenance and certain repairs and things like that. I was also in this search able to find performance by the county on or about March 12th. They reached out via email to ask Ms. Davis to renew the lease agreement. Their proposal was that they would lower the monthly lease amount to $5,000 per month, and it would be all-inclusive for all utilities, all repairs, all capital improvements, all custodial, all snow removal, all lawn care, et cetera, et cetera. At the time they sent the email, Mrs. Davis responded that she was in a meeting at the moment, would review that and get back to the county. However, that was 1 week before the COVID crisis occurred. So according to what I can find, that response was never made. So on or about May 21st, Ernest from Macomb County reached out again to inquire if she'd had a chance to look over the lease proposal. There was no change in their proposal. So at this proposed rate from the county of $60,000 per year, with no ability for the district to recover any additional cost for everything else, that is really not an equitable situation for the district. And we had proposed to the board that one option would be to renew the lease with different terms that were more favorable to the district. The proposal was to raise the rent to $12,000 a month and then make it very clear that the only thing that the district would be responsible for were things attached to the building above the drop ceiling or below the floor, and that they would be responsible for their own custodial, their own general maintenance, their own snow removal, their own lawn cutting and landscaping costs, and that we would bill them directly for the exact cost of utilities as used, and require them to get all utilities except for electricity and heat in their own name so that we would not have to be involved in billing and then waiting for a turnaround to get reimbursed for that. We did not present that to the county, and this lease does expire on August 31st. A second option that is available is that we inform the county that because we're in fiscal distress, we intend to close the building and place it for sale. Regardless of your decision, if we are going to ask them to vacate, according to the current lease language, we must offer them 90 days by which to vacate. So for all intents and purposes, we would be informing them, if you were to choose that option, that they would have to vacate within 90 days or by the end of November, and we would go month to month on the current lease agreement until that date. So the options before the board are to accept the lease proposal as proposed by the county, lowering the rent to $60,000 per year, and we agree to cover every other expense. We can continue to explore a different lease agreement where we would make it more equitable to the district, or the board can choose to close the building and not sell it, just shut it down, or place the building up for sale. It should be pointed out that placing the building up for sale may offer the district some funding with which to help the general fund projected deficit. But at this point, we are seeking that you make a decision and give us some answer with which to go back to the county and give them your decision. So those are the options that I can present, and if you have any questions that I might be able to answer, I'd be happy to do so.
Is that option 1, 2, 3, and 4? What is option 1?
Option 1 is to accept their offer.
What's option 2?
Option 2 is to negotiate the offer for more equitable terms.
I move for option 2.
I support that.
Been moved by Dr. McFadden to continue to negotiate with the county on the lease agreement for Washington. Is that's what your option 2 was? It was second by Member Jarrett. Questions, comments, concern, Mr. Brewley?
I agree with that option, but I also would move to include the sale of the building to the county as part of that option.
So you're amending the motion to add negotiate lease agreement and offer them a purchase.
Or sell them the building.
That would be 2 separate actions.
Well, no, as part of the motion, it would be to offer them a lease agreement or
Option to buy.
option to buy, sell to them.
Okay, let's see. Member Brewley added amendment to add to the motion to continue negotiating the lease agreement with the county. Also offer them a purchase option. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
So Member Brewley amendment is to offer a purchase offer to the county of the building. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Member Monk. Any questions, comments, concerns on the amendment? Doc.
I know I understand the motion on the floor is to amend it to an option to buy. Are we going to throw an option to buy price, or are we going to have them throw a price at us?
My guess, and Mr. Brewley.
I know
made
it's,
the motion,
I'm
you know.
very directing that kind of this way a little bit, so, but
Yes, sir.
you the president.
I would open the discussion, see if they're interested at all, see if they want to offer us something, or if we want to offer them something. I think that would be part of the negotiating process. I think we should be open to both possibilities.
My concern would be that we would need to go back and look at what the appraised value of that building is and see if that's still applicable, because I'm not it's just me. I'm not comfortable with them making me an offer because they're gonna come in and lowball it. And since I'm in a financial dire, I could potentially, take the lowest bid out there. And I know when we put it out on the market before, we didn't get any serious inquiries. And my guess is we might not get any serious, particularly into, what's going on now. Mr. Brew.
I understand. We're in the middle of a pandemic, the worst economic crisis since, and if we can lower the cost to us and they take it over in a way that the community doesn't suffer from having a derelict building, we're ahead. So we tried this other appraisal process before. I understand if we were selling it on the open market to a private developer, that would be an appropriate issue. But if we're selling it to another government partner who is offering programs that support the community, and it's off of our balance sheet as a negative, we are further ahead as a district. So let's not pretend that we have a gem that somehow we're going to get a better deal for. There are a lot of buildings like this around right now.
Any additional, Ms. Escalante? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I just wanted to say, I think by having that as an option for the motion on the table, we don't even have to really worry about the other details right now, because if they're not interested in buying it and all they want to do is lease it, then at least we can work out a lease so that we're not having that as an expense. But if they are interested in buying it, then we can come back and put all of that on the table and figure those details out. But why waste the time, figuring any of that out if they're not even interested? So I think it's better just to have it in there as an option, and then we go from there.
Any additional questions, comments, concerns? Doc?
I like the motion because now we got a current person in there that's leasing the property. That current leasee don't want to move in 90 days and go to the house or breaking everything down. They might say, hey, I'll buy the building from you. They're working in the lease agreement. So we'll see what the negotiation falls into, and then see what happens from there.
Well, we're voting on the amendment, and the amendment is to negotiate the lease. That was the original motion, and Mr. Brewley amended to add to that to offer to the county purchase of the building. If I'm correct, Mr. Brewley. Yep. But that's the amendment. That's the part that we're working through. Yes.
So the motion is option 2 with...
No, the motion right now on the floor is to continue negotiating with the county with the lease. That's the motion that was moved and second. Then Mr. Brewley is adding an amendment in that negotiation of the lease is to offer them to purchase the building. That's his amendment to the motion.
So option 2 to include the option
There
to
is no
purchase.
option 2. It's the motion, and he's amending it.
Okay, the motion was, I
It
chose
was
option
two.
2.
No, the motion was to continue negotiating the lease. There is no option. We can't put
Right,
an option.
but-
We can't
No,
put an
that-
option in the motion. The motion is to continue negotiating the lease.
I got you.
And then Mr. Brewley is adding to that as an amendment in the negotiations of the lease to offer purchase to the county, offer to the county to purchase the building. That's what he's adding to the motion.
With to continue negotiation of the lease.
That was the main motion. He's offering to add to that to offer purchase of the building to the county.
I got it. I'm clear.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions, comments, concerns on the amendment to add the wording to offer the building to purchase to the county? Seeing or hearing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Rulli.
Yes.
Mr. Monk.
Yes.
Dr. McFadden.
Yes.
Ms. Escalante.
Yes.
Ms. Walker.
Yes.
Ms. Jarrett.
Yes.
Mr. Rickman.
Yes. The amendment passes. Now we have to vote on the motion as amended. And the motion as amended is to continue negotiating the lease agreement with the county and to offer for purchase the building to the county.
May I confirm that Mrs. Jarrett was the one that seconded that?
Yes, Mrs. Jarrett was the one who seconded.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Any questions, discussions, concerns on the motion on the floor as amended? To lease and offer to purchase to the county. Continue the lease agreement and offer to purchase to the county. As part of that negotiation. See, Doc.
Just word clear. Negotiating the lease, right? That's going to be primary. And with the option.
No. We will negotiate a lease and offer them to purchase also. If they say, no, we'd just rather lease it, fine. If they say, no, we want to purchase it, fine. If they say, we don't like either, then that takes it into a different direction.
Okay. I'm good.
That's how I'm seeing it now. Help me out now, you know.
No, that is correct.
Yeah.
Basically, we're saying that we're giving this part of the she can go, the
Negotiate a lease
authority,
or-
the authority to go in and negotiate with the county whether they want to do lease or buy the property.
No, lease and purchase.
Lease.
What? No?
Lease
He
or
said
buy.
lease
One
or.
or the other. One or the other.
One or the other, or.
Lease or purchase.
But you saying lease and purchase.
No, I said that's part of the motion is to negotiate the lease and to put on the table, offer them to purchase the
It's
building.
an or.
It's just terminology. I got it.
That's okay.
I got it.
They might come up, hey, we want to lease to own. You know, you never know. So that puts both of them in there. But the motion is to continue the negotiations on the lease and to offer them to purchase the building. That's part of that negotiation.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think I'm hearing, that's what your
Yes.
intent was, Mr. Brewer.
Correct. Moving
Okay. I'm trying, did it get moved a second? I'm losing. You know?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's done.
Any additional questions, concerns on the motion on the floor as amended? Hearing or seeing none, call the roll, please.
Dr. McFadden.
Yes.
Ms. Jarrett.
Yes.
Ms. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Monk.
Yes.
Ms. Escalante.
Yes.
Mr. Rulli.
Yes.
Mr. Rickman.
Yes, motion carries. Informational items. Item A, Finance Committee. Any questions on the financial reports? Mr. Brewer.
I asked a question about identifying the places in the budget that exceeded the budget. Did that ever happen?
Mrs. Potter, do you have a response to that?
I could if anybody asked.
Okay, so he wanted to identify the items in the budget that caused it to be over budget. Is that what you're stating?
Yeah, what I asked is that, were there actions of the board that created what was, we adopted a balanced budget,
No.
No, sir, he did not.
okay? Then to adopt, to let us know the areas that it was not balanced in when it was presented to us as being balanced, or were there actions that we took which then unbalanced it?
Okay, so in the final fiscal year 20, final amended budget, which was approved by the board on May
20th.
20th, thank you. The CFO at that time was projecting about a $36,000 deficit budget. So you had $823,000 roughly as your beginning fund balance. And with that projected deficit, you were lowering your fund balance at that point to $766,000. And then, as we've already discussed, you had 2 roof issues that got approved and had performance in fiscal year 20. We had to book against that $766,000, $439,000 for 90% completion on 2 roof projects, one here in the cafeteria, one in the gym area of the middle school. So that has lowered your now ending fund balance for fiscal year 20, and that also lowers the beginning fund balance for this current fiscal year. In addition to that, the budget for fiscal year 21 had some assumptions. There were assumptions for some staffing reductions in basic instruction. There was some staffing reductions in instructional support. There was some,
I think we were talking about the budget that ended in, our budget is July?
June 30th.
so
The end of June or July?
June
isn't it?
30th.
Right, June 30th.
The budget year. So let's talk about, that's the 1920 budget,
no, that's the 2021 budget.
2021 budget?
That's the current budget. So in that
Not the budget year we're in
No, he's talking
now.
about the 1920 budget that ended June 30, 2020.
Yeah.
The
that's the
1920
question.
budget.
It's not the budget we're in this year, right now. I'm talking about the budget that ended.
The budget
June
that
30th.
ended should be pretty much on task, if not for the roofing project.
Okay.
So the
So all I
roofing
wanted-
project is
all
what
I-
lowered your fund balance. That
So
impacts this
It
year.
was the vote on the 2 roofs that created it.
Correct.
Okay, so I want to know what it was.
For this year, there were some assumptions made and the budget was approved. For example, lowering operations and maintenance by $335,000. And the note there said utilities and supplies. I don't know what the idea was behind it. I don't have any other information but that note, which was shared with the board at the time that you approved the budget. But it concerned me when I saw it because generally I don't expect utilities to go down year to year, and I also am very cautious when it comes to budgeting for operations and maintenance because it's not an area where I can necessarily cut off spending. If something is broken and people are dealing with a flood or an electrical issue that could cause a danger and a risk to everyone in the building, I have to fix it. So I can't say, oh, too bad, your budget's fully expended. And so those are not areas that generally I try to make cuts in as we budget and move forward. So that was very concerning, and there were some other areas where there was clearly some notes that costs would go down or remain exactly the same from last year to this year, but costs do not necessarily remain static. So we know that the cost of retirement goes up every year. We know that utilities go up every year. Even simple things like the purchase of everyday office and or teaching supplies, those things can be increased, prices can go up. So we are implementing some new purchasing policies, and we've got a lot of things in play to help our dollars stretch further. So we are going to try to do the best we can. But for this year, when I went through and created a line item budget, I don't think it's realistic to believe that we can operate on $355,000 less than we did last year. So those kinds of things. So this current year budget that you approved was also a deficit budget for $236,000. So you were going to lower your beginning projected fund balance of $766 down to 503. The issue now is instead of having 766 as your beginning fund balance, we're projecting more like in the $250,000 range. So the deficit budget that was approved at 236 was already bringing you very close to a zero fund balance. And then when we factor in other issues, like I don't really think we can reduce operations and maintenance by $355,000. That's where the tipping point starts to happen. And now when we factor in a global pandemic that's going to require that we do things like purchase kiosks, and yes, we're getting some grants and we're getting some help for that, but it would be unresponsible of me not to plan for some expenditures to be in that general fund bucket, because there is very likely going, unless something happens that I'm unaware of, be a point where grant funding or county help may run out. But our legal obligation to provide that PPE and those kinds of things will not run out. And so those things are some of the things that have caused this discrepancy now.
So let me try to reinterpret it, make sure I understand. So I understand that last year, what caused us to go over was that there was a vote on fixing 2 roofs.
Correct.
And that was why there became a deficit.
You did not, you were not in a deficit at the end of fiscal year 20, but your ending fund balance was significantly lower. It was roughly $400,000 lower
Than what we had expected.
than what you had, actually about $450,000 lower than what you had expected. Your ending balance then impacts your beginning
No,
balance.
all right, so let's slow. So each roof costs about 400, as I remember.
Each roof was on task for the RFP, but what was not accounted for was asbestos abatement, I believe in the high school area, junior high gym area, and the cost by law, by Michigan law, school districts must have an architect or engineer oversee the project, and of course they charge you for that, and those charges are typically not part of the RFP because it's a completely separate service. So when you're saying I need construction on a roof, you don't have the architects bidding on it, you have the actual construction companies. But those architect fees and oversight fees that we are required to provide and pay for have driven up the cost from $400,000 to $490,000 for the 2 projects.
Okay, so that was that. Now what you're saying is you came and you decided, which was fine for me, but you decided that you needed to adjust the budget to do it the way you are comfortable with, as opposed to the way we have been living with for my 8 years here. And that is that you have put in items there that you think we need, but we in the past have scaled back because we knew we couldn't afford. From what I heard, from what you said, and I heard, you basically, and I'm not disagreeing with premises upon which you did it, but I'm just saying with things that we said. So I would ask that that be presented to the board and explained so that we can validate or not validate what we are comfortable with or not. And you can explain that to us, but that this get resolved as quickly as possible so that we can be as close as possible to having a balanced budget.
So I agree with you, Mr. Bruley, and typically when we present a budget amendment to you, which we are required to do when we realize that expenditures will be higher or revenues will change, we would come to you and make a budget presentation, which is what I expect to do. What we're holding on is the final word from the state. So for an example, just today, we were notified yesterday that it passed the House. We were notified today that it passed the Senate, that they're going to change the per pupil foundation formula of how you count your FTEs or your student count, so that it's 75% of what was counted last year and 25% of what is counted this year. And when I did that number, it helped the district tremendously. And so what we are waiting on before we come before the board is we'd like to be able to come before the board with truly our best possible knowledge and information. And what we do not have from the state is confirmation that, because it has not yet been signed by the governor, confirmation that they will use that FTE formula. And we also do not have any information from them on how they plan to fund schools this year. And that's a massive piece for our budget because that's our revenue stream. So anything that I present to you now is not solid information. It's all supposition.
Right.
It's supposition for me too. And
Right.
that's why we are not necessarily ringing the bell and going to the state yet ourselves, because it's possible that as things start to shake out, it may not be as dire as we fear. But because the possibility existed, you know, we also don't want you to think that we're not keeping you informed. So we are informing you that there are some changes to your budget. And the changes that I can tell you about are based on historical figures, historical data of what actually happens in the O&M department of this district. Yes, I have amended the budget expenditure side to reflect historical projections. And there are some other pieces as well. Like I said, if you look at your budgets, what she put in for business office in fiscal year 1920 is exactly what she put in for 2021. And what I need you to understand is, even if I spend every dollar in the supply budget exactly the same, and even if I don't go over or even come under a little in some of those buckets, employment costs are going up. We're not in control of it. You're not in control of it. The state of Michigan and the Office of Retirement Services is in control of it. So we will go over that budget. There's no question.
I understand that, but since I at least wasn't informed of those other things in the past about the roof issues, I want to make it on the record that we will have a process by which we will do that.
Yep.
I do not expect all the answers now.
No.
I understand the fluidity of the state government and what they're experiencing. And I understand your thought on why we may need this, that, or the other thing. But then it has to be given to us to figure out whether we do that or not.
For sure. So the law of Michigan for school boards is that when we have our ducks in a row and the state finally does give us this final piece of information, I will come before you as the CFO with a budget amendment proposal, and the board must vote on that proposal. So we will give you the information, allow you to disseminate that, and then vote on that and see where we can land from that point on.
I don't mean to backtrack on the roofs, but I wanted to know, when was the additional expense for the asbestos abatement brought to the attention of the business office? Was that prior to your arrival or during?
So I had a meeting with the finance committee meeting on a Tuesday. At that time, we were using our best guesstimates in the business office, that it would be a $400,000 booking against your fund balance. I think by the time of the workshop on Thursday, we had all of the audited pieces in from the auditors. We kind of turned it over to them to guide us on how to book that because it wasn't complete. So the rule is you have to book percentage of completion. And at that time on Thursday is when we were given the list to show all of the charges totaling $490 and how much to book in last year and how much to book into this year. And that is another piece. We have to book $52,000-ish into this year's budget that wasn't counted on. And so that information became aware to us literally on Thursday, and I shared that at the work study with you.
Okay.
I don't think we
then-
call it a work study. I don't know why I keep calling it a work study.
That's okay.
but Workshop.
I just wanted to reiterate concerning the vote on those roofs. When we as a board voted on that, we were told that the roof over the cafeteria would come out of food service funding. And that at the time, prior to COVID, our state rep had secured some additional funding for us to go towards the roof over the gymnasium. Well, then COVID hit, so we knew we weren't getting that money. We never lost it because we never got it. So I think everybody was kind of caught off guard when this information was presented, because we were expecting it to be half that amount, and then sock on another $90K for the asbestos. That's quite a hit. And the only reason I bring this to point now is so that the public understands that the last thing we wanted to do was make a decision as a board that would throw us closer into deficit again, because we worked the whole entire district worked so hard to get out of debt. And so
Yes.
me personally, it broke my heart when I found out that we were approaching deficit again. But unfortunately, you have to have safe structures, and we had been putting it off. I mean, we've been talking about the roof since I got on the board.
Right.
So it's just one of those things. I hope people can understand that.
Any additional questions regarding the finance report? Mr. Moss?
Just some clarification. How much additional funds did the asbestos tack on to the original bill?
So the asbestos abatement was actually the smallest part, and I don't have the figures in front of me, Mr. Monk, but I believe it was just shy of $9,000.
Okay.
The remaining costs are for architecture oversight.
Okay. Now, I'm looking back at the budget that we adopted. It shows that a net operating was minus 263,000, and that would leave us an ending fund balance of 503,000. But you're saying when you looked at it, that wasn't the case.
So if you took that 503 and
Okay.
lowered it by 439,
Mm-hmm.
that would be what it would be before we have to add 52 for this year's portion of the roof, and then the adjustments that I made in my budget amendment proposal. So it's not what you've passed yet, to more accurately reflect district cost for this year.
So that price of that roof lowered, that 503,000
Correct, correct.
that we thought we had, but because I think this roof didn't come out of the food, it had to come out of general fund.
Correct.
Okay. I'm with
So, and we did make sure that the auditors, were aware that we were hoping we could, that you had that expectation, but it's actually illegal to book that through the cafeteria fund.
Okay, thank you.
I heard a lot of numbers around here. Now, you said we had $700,000 minus $407,000 for the roofs, right? Which gave us about $307,000 fund balance, correct?
Yeah, I think that when we look at it now, there is always at the end of the audit, there's that plus or minus 10%, because when you approve your final budget, those are still our projections. You approved it on May 20th. We had to get through June, 30th.
Okay, I'm getting somewhere with this.
So I think the final fund balance for last year was coming in at roughly 260, I want to say.
Okay, so 260 last year fund balance, right?
Right.
But because of budget planning, which we plan for this year, coming up, worst case scenario planning took us further into a deficit, correct?
I'm very sorry, I feel bad.
That's all right, you're gonna see my lips. So because of worst case scenario planning, the deficit grew more, correct? Because of COVID and the PPE and everything else that we cannot count on, correct?
Correct.
So we had about 2-something fund balance, but with the planning coming up, it increased or decreased the fund balance by what? 500,000, 700,000, what was it?
So your beginning fund balance, instead of being 766, is more like 269.
Right?
Mr. Mike said that the deficit budget approved was for 263. So before I made any changes, that would have left you an ending fund balance of roughly $7,000, right?
Right.
Okay. The auditors have now instructed us, even if I didn't change anything else, to book $53,000 of the remaining roof projects that were finished in July into this year's budget.
Got it.
So 7 minus 53 is negative 40 something. I'm not doing the math because I'm tired.
46.
Negative 43,000. Add to that I have made some adjustments. Yes, I have made some adjustments that I think needed to be made, that I feel strongly we justify making. And that it starts to explain when you start to see that. Now, at the same time, since we last talked, we've had some good news. We've had some more funding come through. We've had this change in how they're going to count our kids, which benefits the district. So things are fluctuating, and that's why we're not bringing you a budget proposal to approve yet. We're just letting you know.
I'm happy to hear the good news, but what was the number before the good news? That's what I want to know.
What was the number before?
The deficit number. How much we were short?
On what you approved? Oh, on what we showed you, it was roughly $1.1 million.
So your worst case scenario planning brought it to a $1.7 million deficit?
That worst case scenario was showing you those costs, already, a rough estimate of those costs. So I was booking about $420,000 for the roofs. I was booking 400 into last year and 20 into this year, so I was off by about 70. We had to book 439 into last year and 437 into last year and about 53 into this year. So that discrepancy wasn't quite that big. But we were showing at that time about a $1.1 million deficit on that report that this year. But it is better now, but everything is still up in the air. So it's still in a deficit, but it's not quite that deep. So there have been some changes and some things happening, and that is precisely why we haven't come to you yet. The budget is always a liquid document that can change on the turn of the dime, but until we have some guidance from the state, from revenue side, it's really not even ready to present.
Right.
It just isn't.
Makes sense.
Any additional questions regarding the financial reports?
I'm sorry?
I'm asking, are there any additional questions for the financial reports? Trying to let you sit down.
Not yet.
Any additional questions on the financial reports? Any questions on the open purchase order listings? Any questions on the church leases? Mr. Monk.
We talked about this. So is it my understanding that those two entities will be charged for pushing of the snow, total charge? There's no, we pay a percent, they pay a percent, they paying 100%.
Correct. Yes. So the back lot here, that charge would go to the church in the high school, and the side lot would go to the church in the middle school.
Any Any additional questions regarding the church leases? Carnes Center. Any questions regarding Carnes Center? Moving on to item 9, curriculum personnel. A, employee layoff. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, oh boy, excuse me. This is an information piece. When Mrs. Davis presented her budget indicated that there would be 3 teacher layoffs was built into her budget. And this is to tell you that at this point, we have 3 teachers who have left the district and we are not replacing them. So at this point, there are no layoffs.
Reduction by attrition.
Pardon?
Reduction by attrition. They left.
Exactly, reduction by attrition. Now, we may have to have a different conversation when numbers come in, but right now, reduction by attrition.
Any questions, Mr. Monk?
Those resignations, are they from elementary, middle school, high school?
They're sort of across the board. A 5th grade teacher resigned from Seminole, and the music teacher here at the high school and middle school resigned earlier this year, and a special education teacher resigned as well from the I believe she was high school.
Okay, thanks.
Any additional questions? Item 10, superintendent's comments.
I'll keep them short. Just really quickly, I just want to give a shout out and a thank you. I had the opportunity to have a visit from a Mr. David Feminio. He's an attorney, and his office is right as I go down Gratiot heading home. It's like right there.
Feminino.
Yeah. And he came in and gave us a $1,000 donation to use in any way we wish, and he would like to have a relationship with our schools and help us out. We are using these funds to help provide additional. Remember those math manipulatives I spoke about earlier? So we're putting that donation towards that, and we also have a $700 donation from New Generation Church, and we are also using that towards that purchase of those manipulatives for the K-5 students. But Mr. Feminino, it's late and it's hard. Anyways, he would, like I said, he would really like to have a relationship with our schools, and we're excited to have a partnership with him.
Awesome.
Very nice.
That's it?
Yeah, I said it was she.
That's it?
Yeah, she said. I
All
can
right.
go on if you'd like. No.
Committee reports. Any additional information from the Business Finance Committee?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. Any additional information from the Community Coalition? I'm seeing Mr. Lindenberry shake his head no. No additional information. Any additional information from the Curriculum Personnel
None.
Committee? None from, no report from the Educational Foundation or the Legislative Committees. That puts you back in the policy. Any updates on the policy or anything, Mr. Monk?
No additional information.
All right. That takes us down to agenda item 12. Which is an executive session, and the executive session is for the purpose of attorney-client privileged information.
Are you taking action afterwards?
We'll come back in, and the only action that will be taken at this point right now, I'm thinking, would be the adjournment.
Would you mind any board comment before executive session so we can finish?
Well, there might be something that comes out of the executive session that we might have to act on, but right now I don't think there is. But yeah. So the chair would entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of attorney-client privileged information.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Monk,
Support.
second by Mrs. Jarrett. Any questions, comments on the motion on the floor? Hearing and seeing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Monk?
Yes.
Ms. Jarrett?
Yes.
Mr. Brewley?
Yes.
Ms. Escalante?
Yes.
Dr. McFadden?
Yes.
Ms. Walker? Mr. Rickman?
Yes, motion carries. The meeting is in recess at 9:31, going into executive session.